Mr. Narayana Murthy, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. On behalf of, personally and on behalf of Chiratae, we are honored to have you accept the Chiratae Patrick J Award for Lifetime Achievement from India. I have personally known you for many years during my Wipro days, Infosys days. And this is in some sense me meeting my mentor and my role model after a long time. So thank you for spending the time with us.
Well, thank you for your kind words, Sudhir. Before I say anything else, I must thank you, thank Chiratae Investments, thank the entire team, and of course the jury for selecting me for this Lifetime Achievement Award, named after an extraordinary anchor investor like Patrick J. McGovern. I'm very, very grateful. As I said earlier to you, in the remaining years of my life, I will try to work hard and hopefully smart to live up to your expectations.
Very nice of you to say that. So, Mr. Murthy, we're going to talk about a few things. And since I come now from the entrepreneurial world, what made you start Infosys? I mean, at that time, entrepreneur word was not something common. And so what was the motivation to start Infosys?
Well, you know, I came from a pretty well educated family. My grandfather was a graduate in 1879. My uncles, my father, they were all well qualified. So we were not used to any risk taking. There was no discussion on any entrepreneurial ambitions that my parents wanted me to pursue or any other sibling to pursue. However, those days, we were brought up under the staple diet of Nehruvian socialism. Nehru built, in some sense, a strong foundation for modern India in terms of atomic energy, in terms of Bakranangal Dam, in terms of steel plants, in terms of all India, so medical sciences, and first IIT,
yes,
and first the second and third IIT, definitely. So all these things happen under his leadership. So we were all in some sense highly influenced by Pandit Nehru, and consequently we are all left of center. I was working at IIM Ahmedabad as the chief systems programmer, and I got an opportunity to go and join a company in France in early 70s. And when I went to France, my whole edifice of socialism and communism just broke down. I was under the impression that the only way a poor country like India can bring prosperity is through socialism and communism. But when I went to France, which had accepted capitalism, I saw there was a lot of prosperity, roads were clean, there was excellent metro system, the trains ran on time, there was a lot of disposable income, lots of good shops, people going to higher education in a larger percentage than in India, etc., etc. On every dimension that I saw, France was far, far, far ahead of India. That's when I became confused. I said, what is wrong in my assumption? I have been a socialist and a communist sympathizer. I was not a card-carrying communist, but a communist sympathizer till today. Now I find that in capitalism, all that we were dreaming of happening probably 50 or 100 or 200 years later was already happening there. So therefore, I started attending public lectures on various isms, on capitalism, socialism, communism, etc., at Sorbonne. And I met some of the leaders of these isms. In fact, I met Georges Marchais, who was then the leader of the French Communist Party, and I had a long discussion with him. Somehow I found that the leaders of socialism and communism didn't convince me how their isms could bring prosperity to a country like India. On the other hand, the leaders of capitalism convinced me, and that's when I decided that I'll go back to my country, and if possible, I will conduct an experiment in entrepreneurship under the aegis of capitalism and see if capitalism can indeed solve some of the problems of India.
Interesting. And I presume, I know you're very fluent in French.
Oh yeah. Really,
I saw you with the French consulate general people at one time, and I was like surprised that you spoke in French, and then the whole audience, including myself, were like, okay, what's going on? How do you know French? Now I know how do you know French.
Well, I mean, it's a great language, and I enjoyed learning it, and I have, even today before you came, I was listening to a French song.
Okay, so excellent. Now, starting a company needs money. There was no VCs like us at that time. How did you get your seed capital?
Well, first of all, the idea that I embraced for founding Infosys was a services company. My first company, Softronics, was a failure. It focused on the domestic market. There was hardly any domestic market. I quickly realized it. My wife is the one who said, look, do you want to go down this path for too long? And I quickly closed the company. And then I became the general manager of Patrick Computer Systems Limited, of the software division.
And you were in Pune at that time?
No, I was in Pune when I did Softronics experiment. Later on, I went to Bombay and I joined Patrick Computer Systems Limited. I was the general manager, and I learned a lot, and I realized that if India focused on the export market in services, India would succeed, because first of all, in the US, thanks to the explosion of super mini computers, I knew there was going to be a huge demand for software development. There were super mini computers like Datasun MB8000, VAX 11750, VAX 11780, Prime 750 or something like that. All these mini computers ushered in commercial computing facilities in smaller and medium companies, as well as in departmental computing of larger companies. That's the demand side on the.
But those people, those companies. So first and foremost, that was a demand side. But how did you raise capital to start a company?
No, what I did was that I did work out with the first customer with whom we had worked earlier, saying that, look, here invited 5 younger people or junior people to work with me, and they came. And then I told this company in New York that, look, we need a certain advance for, a small advance. And we got that advance. But more importantly, we got the equity of just 10,000 rupees. At that time, a couple of my younger colleagues couldn't put in the money that was required. So my wife gave the entire money, and later on we returned it to everybody. And that's how we started with an equity of 10,000 rupees. But we had an advance
from the customer.
Okay. Sufficient for 1 month, and I worked out a very good watertight contract where the customer had to pay for the month within 10 days of the completion of the month.
Okay.
Because RBI was very strict those days. So that's how we managed. And then, we have always been frugal.
Sure.
I mean, I don't know if I've ever told you this. Till I retired, even today, when I go to Narita, I don't take a car, I take a bus from Narita airport to the hotel in the city. Till I retired, I always took the bus from JFK airport to Manhattan. So we were quite used to austerity. And therefore, it was not such a difference. I took 10% of my salary when I founded Infosys, and I gave 20% more to all my younger colleagues, Nandan, Chris, Dinesh, Arvind, everybody. So they were happy, and I was quite happy because money has never been a big issue in my case. So therefore, it was not that difficult.
Oh, interesting. So Infosys started to grow. I do remember you're the first company in India to go public as an IT services company.
1993 February.
And with Vallabh
Bansali, Inam, Vallabh Bansali, and of course Nimish Shah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so scaling happened. Now, today's entrepreneurs are moving to dominant positions in the market space in India, which is becoming easier.
Yeah.
But many of them are now moving outside the country, and they're into products. Most entrepreneurs are into products, software products, SaaS products, and even consumer products like Lenskart and FirstCry, SaaS products like Pixis and Unifor, etc. What were the 2 top challenges which you faced, and what would you advise to entrepreneurs of today when they want to expand globally? The 2 things which they must do.
Well, our challenges were different from the challenges of today. Those days, the banks didn't recognize software as worthy of any loan, any debt. That was a big issue. Not even for working capital.
Okay.
Forget about.
So you were always self-funded in some sense.
Yeah. Second, the licensing those days took about 2 to 3 years, about 50 visits to Delhi, all of that. Fortunately, that licensing was abolished as part of 1991 economic reforms. Third, there was no current account convertibility till 1991. What that meant was, if I wanted to travel abroad, I had to apply to RBI, wait for 15 days, and then if that officer is kind to me, I may get an approval to travel abroad.
But all that doesn't exist today.
Those were the big challenges for us, because we had the talent, we had the smartness, customer was convinced about our capability. So the market existed, the talent existed. These are the 2 most important requirements for success of any entrepreneur. First, the market must be there. Second, talent must be there with an idea that has a differentiated business value to the consumers or the customers compared to any other competing product.
Or company, yeah.
Yeah, or company, whatever, service, whatever.
So, highly differentiated, not incrementally differentiated product or service is essential for definitely in India also and outside the country for a new company to come in. Overall.
I think differentiated business value is the name of the game. But you have to conduct an inexpensive market survey whether there is disposable income in the country amongst a sufficient size of the market to buy your product.
Sure.
Otherwise, the entrepreneur won't succeed.
So, how was your two questions? One is Infosys became absolutely the role model for governance in the country.
Yeah.
And how would you advise entrepreneurs to emulate you, and how did you benefit from governance?
Well, after we went public, we had a very difficult public issue. Everybody knows that. I came to the conclusion that no matter what happens, I want Infosys to succeed well. And I said, look, in order to succeed, we need to seek respect from every stakeholder. If you seek respect from customers, you will get repeat business. Why you get repeat business? Because respect will only come from customers in our business if you executed the project with the requisite quality, delivered it on the promised day, and delivered it at the agreed cost. Second, if you seek respect from employees, they will talk about the company to other people and good employees will come and join, they will stay in the company. Third, if you seek respect from investors and follow the principle of good governance, of fairness, transparency and accountability, they will be long-term players in your company. Fourth, if you seek respect from vendor partners, when the going is tough for you, they will say, okay, these are good people, they have been wonderful in reasonable time, this is a tough time for them, therefore we will extend the credit terms a little further.
Okay.
If you seek respect from bureaucrats, they would all want to help you in whatever way they can. It has happened to me so many times. They all want you to succeed in some way because they too have children. They want them to become entrepreneurs. So therefore, I haven't had a situation where any of the senior bureaucrats that I have dealt with wished me ill. Never. Finally, if you seek respect from the society, then that society will provide you good customers. After all, society contributes customers, employees, investors,
everything,
vendor partners, and the bureaucrats and the politicians. Therefore, I realized that the way to become strong economically is for a corporation to seek respect from every one of the stakeholders, and that's what good governance is all about. That's the instrument.
So that's the highest common denominator.
Absolutely.
Amongst all stakeholders.
That's right.
And to that extent, it's something which binds every stakeholder together.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And many a times, high governance for very young companies means something different. So you're saying it's it's just taking care of your customers, just taking care of
Yeah.
your employees, and not, it doesn't have to be only financial in nature.
Yeah, no, I think the fundamental principle is you have to be fair, you have to be transparent, and you have to be accountable with every stakeholder.
Okay.
You follow these three fundamental principles of good
cannot go
governance,
wrong. Yeah.
then there is zero problem for you. Zero problem. I can assure you that.
No, well said, and that's a great learning for employees.
Thank you.
And for new entrepreneurs.
Yeah. And if all these can be summed up in a very simple way, that is, how do I get higher and higher respect from each of my stakeholders? That's the only sentence that a CEO has to worry every day. Nothing more, nothing more. Whenever he or she has to take a decision, he or she has to say, will this decision of mine give me greater respect from every one of the stakeholders? No, there will be many times when you may do something that in the short term does not seem beneficial to some stakeholder. However, as long as you explain it properly, as long as you are transparent about why you are doing it, as long as you are fair, as long as you have data and facts with you in explaining that decision, even a person who loses a transaction will say, yeah, I too would have done the same way.
Sure, sure.
So that's important.
Mr. Murthy, Infosys grew to greater heights and is still growing to greater heights. Many entrepreneurs who start young companies over a 10-year period, which is much shorter than what Infosys grew into, are also growing to revenues of 5,000 crores and 10,000 crores today, more than $1 billion revenue.
Yeah.
And the biggest challenge which all entrepreneurs face, they're young by the way, is perhaps what you addressed in Infosys. That is the whole area of succession planning. How did you think about succession planning? And these are young entrepreneurs who are building. I mean, today's young entrepreneurs who scaled companies over 10, 12 years would be anywhere between 500 to $1 billion revenue. And they are also now doing succession planning. They're having people who are higher in age coming and joining them, and they have to find leaders under them to grow the company further. Any thoughts on that?
Well, I don't know if I can call myself successful in succession planning, to be very honest with you. Yes, as long as the people that I chose, Nandan Nilekani, Chris Gopalakrishnan and Shibulal are concerned, I think they were all good people. There is no doubt. I would call myself a success. But what came after that, in some way, is a clear, whether it is as chairman of the company or the CEO, I think it was clearly a failure on my part, as long as I was there in some way. I left in 2014.
Yeah.
So therefore, I have to accept that I was a failure.
Your advice to entrepreneurs as they scale on how to address that, learning from what you did, how to address this issue?
I think that's the most important question for entrepreneurs. I have realized one thing. If you want succession planning to succeed, do not bring in a new chairman and a new CEO at the same time. That is a disaster. And I am an example of that disaster. So therefore, I would say that culture is very important. Therefore, either of the two has to come from within, somebody who has been nurtured in that culture for a long time, and that person can have some influence on this new guy new person who is coming from outside, and that's the only way that an organization. Fortunately, in the case of Infosys, Nandan came and then he brought it back on the rails. But otherwise, it would have been a disaster.
Excellent. That's great advice, because these companies are growing rapidly, and in many cases there are perhaps one or two founders, but the army of leaders they need. When the narrative for growth is a new business model, new technology, new product, new revenue model, new go-to-market, new territories, you find people very less who can qualify to join, because these entrepreneurs are basically going into new domains and new markets which have never been tackled before.
I'll tell you, while I agree with you, but the more important thing is culture.
And what is that culture?
As you know very well, Peter Drucker said, eats strategy for lunch.
Right.
Therefore, if you want a desirable longevity in a company after you are gone, the best way is to put in a mechanism to maintain the culture of the company, even when you bring in a new culture. So therefore, don't bring a new chairman and a new CEO at the same time, because that is a recipe for a disaster. On the other hand, make sure that there is a mechanism to maintain the old culture, old proven culture in the company, while you usher in a new person, somebody from a new culture. To be fair to that new person, you have to do it, otherwise
you have to give him a chance to succeed.
For a failure.
Yeah.
So from that point of view, my request to all entrepreneurs is not to bring in a new chairman and a new CEO at the same time.
I have a rule called the 15% rule. Every year, 15% of the people must be new, and internal people can go and do the needful. Right?
Absolutely.
And if you give growth patterns to internal people, your culture is maintained. Mr. Murthy, Infosys was phase 1. Now Catamaran, and I just found out today that there's a commonality between Chiratae and Catamaran. Chiratae is a leopard, and in Kannada, and Catamaran is a fast boat. And as I was saying to you earlier,
very agile boat.
Very agile boat.
Agile, austere boat.
And austere boat. And the leopard has to be agile, and the leopard has to be speedy. And by the way, that's what VCs
hungry.
And hungry. That's what VCs and entrepreneurs are today. But Catamaran also has an additional, I was mentioning to you, the fact that it goes on water, which is liquidity, which all VCs need. Your journey in Catamaran, how did you think about it? And how do you look at Catamaran today in terms of investing in entrepreneurs in the market?
Well, I have always been a details-oriented person, right from day one.
I've had the pleasure of serving with you as the chairman on the SEBI committees, and I know your detailing.
Thank you. So when I retired, I was advised that I have to occupy myself with something where I can connect strategy with ground level reality. So we started Catamaran with interest in secondary markets, with interest in private equity, with interest in venture capital, with interest in strategic partnerships. We have done very well in secondary markets, no doubt. We did very well in strategic partnerships. Private equity is still work in progress, so I don't want to talk about it. In VC, we started with early stage investing. Those days, there was a lot of money rushing into the country. So everybody was offering hundreds of millions of dollars and entrepreneurs were also obviously they wanted to take advantage of it. By nature, I'm very careful about spending money on any of my deals. It was so at Infosys even. So we focused on intelligent entrepreneurs. Okay, some of it didn't work out as well as we should. So I wouldn't claim that we have done as well in early stage. Now we don't do much of that. But overall, I would say I'm very proud of what they have done in strategic partnerships, in secondary markets, and of course in private equity, which still work in progress. But you know, in 2021, when I turned 75, I retired from Catamaran. I don't go there. I don't go to the office. I sit here in my home office. My wife sits upstairs. Nowadays, I occupy all my time in reading physics, mathematics, and theoretical computer science on one hand, and meeting people like you from whom I can learn.
And music.
Music, of
and
course.
Music.
Yeah, music. Music. Yes, absolutely. That's my second interest. So, Catamaran has followed the values. That's why, you know, that if you remember the first byline of Infosys, that is powered by intellect and driven by values.
Values, yeah.
Catamaran has followed the same principle, powered by intellect, driven by values. However, their byline is different, from ideas to outcomes. This I thought was a brilliant byline. So we, you know, there are competent people. Mr. M.D. Rangnath and Mr. Deepak Patki have done a brilliant job. And I'm positive that they will do a great job. Sure. They have values, they have competence, and therefore, my view is if you have competence and values, eventually you will succeed very well. So, that's what I...
Well, to me, phase 1 was Infosys for you. Phase 2 is Catamaran. I'm sure there's going to be Catamaran, you know, to a scale which India has never seen before. As such, knowing your ability to build organizations, I wish Catamaran you all the best.
Thank you.
As such, and look forward to a strong Catamaran who will influence entrepreneurs to greater heights in the country.
No, I think we're very grateful to all of you, because there is so much learning for Catamaran from all of you. And one principle that I have always followed since the year 1969, when I joined IIM Ahmedabad, is always be open-minded to learn from people who perform better than you. That is the best way to become better.
Yeah.
If I close my eyes saying that what is there for me to learn from him, no, I am the loser, not the other person.
Sure.
So therefore, my hope is that Catamaran, which has very similar values, will learn from all the wonderful institutions that have performed very well, better than them in early stage investments, late stage investments, etc. And I'm sure they will learn and they will do even better.
Mr. Murthy, thank you very much. You're a role model for all of us.
Thank you.
In excellence, in humility, and building large-scale organizations which never have been built in India. And I'm sure you will influence thousands of entrepreneurs in the coming years.
Thank you
and all the best.